Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inside ArtScroll, where the books you read and the people who write them come to life. Today we are joined by prolific artist and author Rabbi Yonah Weinrib. Thank you, Rabbi Weinrib, for coming down to ArtScroll.
My pleasure.
And we're here to talk about many things, but first of all, your brand new release, The Childhood Treasury. Let's start there. Just tell our audience what the new book is about and how much work went into it.
It's exciting. This was my COVID project, and over the course of the last number of months, it really completed a series. I started with a book years back. The Rennert family commissioned a book on bar mitzvah, which went back to the 90s for Mr. Rennert's son, Ari, and I worked together with a good friend and colleague, Rabbi Yaakov Solomon. We created a book about bar mitzvah, the history, the customs, the stories, the halachos about bar mitzvah. We evolved from there. I did the work subsequently on bat mitzvah, which another segment.
So we actually have here the bat mitzvah treasury, the bar mitzvah treasury, and the wedding treasury.
Yes, and that really completes the cycle, but I had never had an opportunity to do the first part of life, which represents from birth till bar bat mitzvah. It was an exciting endeavor. The Halpern family commissioned the work, and it really deals with everything of life cycle celebrations from that period of time, even before birth, before a child is born. What are the concepts? What's happening? And we go through the different things based on Chavos Alavavos and the research and the background and the history and, of course, artwork, which deal with the different aspects of life before the child is born, once the child is born, and the different stages of development, including Kiddush for a girl, Bris, Shalom Zachar, the different aspects of Pidyon Haben, Upsharon, if that's for those who keep the custom, and many, many areas of chinuch, including aspects of professional perspectives on chinuch. We've dealt with some of the major educators and people who are in the field of chinuch, including the contemporary ones as well as the Eish Kodesh, the PSS Rebbe Hashem Yom Kondomo, who authored volumes about chinuch and discussing how you can give the chinuch to children of every era, and it was something which was certainly applicable then, back in the Warsaw Ghetto, and hundreds of years earlier, and today as well. We deal with stories, also dealing with different segments of bris and raising children. And it was a phenomenally exciting work, getting to see all the different aspects coming together. It's nearly 300 pages, and I worked together with my son, Rabbi Avram Weinrib, and my son, Rabbi Yonah Weinrib, and of course the graphic artistry of my daughter, Yunina Hartstein, who helped design and create and formatting of all the books, has added a tremendous dimension to the completed work as well. Seeing their childhoods growing up made it that much more impressive. It was really dedicated to all of my children, Baruch Hashem, each successful in their own right, and seeing the childhood come to fruition as a book was very, very meaningful for me.
Now your works are very, very unique, almost unlike anything that we see in the frum world. It's really, your work is one of a kind. Your art, which is complemented by your scholarly writings. But take us back a bit. You've been doing this, I think, 45 years.
Approximately, yeah.
Firstly, where did you grow up? What were the influences in your youth?
It's interesting that I started out of town. Out of town means out of New York, out of Lakewood, out of any of the big cities. My parents were survivors. I consider myself a survivor as well. They went through the concentration camps. My father went through Auschwitz. He grew up in Pietrków in Poland, where Mayor Shapiro was the Rav of the city. I was fortunate to go back together with some of my sons to Pietrków this past summer. We went back to the place where my father grew up and was saved. Baruch she'asa la'avi neis v'makom hazeh. He was literally saved miraculously from the ghetto in Pietrków. Later sent to Auschwitz, and then they had the stamina, the emunah, the will to continue to build. And he and my mother were married in the DP camps in Germany. They came over to Connecticut. Why Connecticut? Why New Britain, Connecticut, of all places? That was the city that was willing to take in refugees. They were the first refugees in New Britain. And my sister, who was born in Germany, in the DP camps, came along also to America, the new country. They spoke no English. And it's interesting that my mother, Allah Shalom, saved a report card from kindergarten in New Britain, Connecticut. And the teacher, I must say, she was very perceptive. She said that Yonah is a quiet and dependable child, and he works well in art, and he expresses himself with clever and mature ideas in art and language.
Wow.
For a 5-year-old kid to be noticed, I guess at some point there was something which was there, but I enjoyed art from early on. But again, it's a hobby. It's not something which really can be taken to be done as a career. I took a detour later on, but I think the where it began to take shape really was in high school. And I think that very often that really...
Where was that? Where did you go to?
I was in Yeshiva, Philadelphia.
Okay.
And a day school kid who left after 8th grade to go to the big Yeshiva, Philadelphia. And I think very often that the two loves that I have, the love of learning and the love of art, really came together. As I got a deeper appreciation for learning on a serious level. A day school is a day school, and I'm Makato very much for the influences that they gave me as a child. We learned diktuk actually in day school, which was certainly helpful. And working with the faculty of the school was helpful, but you have to be prepared for learning as a Talmud in yeshiva, and the major yeshiva like Philadelphia. And as I began to learn more, of course, my doodling took on a different thing. People remember that I used to doodle on the sides of my notebook. But the love of the learning, the love of the letters, and really the calligraphy was really the first part of my venture into the field. The letters were something which are fascinating. The tzuras oisias, the formation of the letters, and in a Sefer Torah, the exactitude that you have to have. But again, there's no artwork in the Sefer Torah. It's very, very exacting. In some way, it's because of the strict nature of the letters. There's no artistic expression in working with the Sefer Torah. But the letters and the meanings of the letters, the examples of the letters, the part of the learning Tanakh was something which is also very pivotal. And Tanakh and Medrash all came together. And when you see the vastness of what Chazal have to offer, it's overwhelming. And then as I worked with that, I began to do work in the field in calligraphy. I think the first...
This was still when you were single as a bacher?
I was a bacher, yeah. I was a bacher. I started doing some doodling, some sketching, some...
any formal training, or was this just kind of self-taught?
It's a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Wow. I certainly camp was a factor. There's no question that that most people don't have an opportunity to express themselves artistically or musically or dramatically until they get to camp.
Surely not in yeshiva, right?
Not in yeshiva, no.
Yeah.
Not in yeshiva. It's something that being in camp, I was in Camp Tarvadas for a few years. Baruch Hashem was the color artist. We lost. But
really?
Yeah, the opposing artists were Nutta Goldbrenner and Shia Markowitz of Goldmark fame. They created a tremendous graphics company, very successful. I went my own track, and that was something which but we were together in camp, being in color war. I believe Nutta introduced me to the first instrument that could be used as a calligraphy pen. I wasn't familiar with the thing. I was doing my own studies, and it was an eye-opener to me, and you could do a stroke with a nib, a calligraphic tool, to help me create the letters that I wanted to. And then one part of it was the art, and the music was something which is perhaps we'll get to a little bit later, which also gave rise in Camp Tarvadas. So it was an exciting period, but again, that's a hobby.
But you're a bacher and you're dabbling in art, we would say.
Right.
Was there a point where you said, you know what, this could really become a career? This is my passion, but maybe I could do this for a living.
Not really. It's something that, I love doing it, but I said, how will the opportunity ever present itself in art? Again, there's a notion of the starving artist.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
The starving artist.
Ask you. We don't talk about starving doctors or starving
Right,
lawyers,
exactly.
but there is an expression, the starving artist, which almost gives the impression that artists are passionate about pursuing their talent or whatever it might be, even at the expense of making a living.
Exactly. And part of it is interesting. When some years back, I met someone who'd seen my work and different things. He'd seen some of the publications, some of the artwork. He'd never met me before. And he saw me and he said, Rabbi Weinrib, he said, I'm very disappointed. I said, okay, I thought maybe it was a piece of art that was offensive to him. He said, no. He said, you're an artist, but you're normal. What does that mean? It's something that I think that the impression of the artist with the beret and the long hair and the ripped dungarees, it gives you the impression, and of course the sandals, gives you the understanding of an artist has to be someone who lives in his own little bubble,
kind of out of the mainstream.
Exactly, and not being connected to reality. Parnassa can come. You can skip meals because it's just a necessary evil that you have to eat, but you have to get the work done. Mm-hmm. And there's no question there was a passion about creating. It's something which is phenomenally exciting. And I think when people ask me about the different types of work that I've done and the ones that are most exciting for me, it's where the images of Chazal and the Medrash work together with a visual image and they come together as a seamless whole. It's phenomenal. And I think that really part of the work that I hope to create is to give rise not to my vision of the art, but to Chazal visions of the art. And something which is so, the imagery, the Mesholim that you'll find throughout Gemaras and Medrash and Chazal is so powerful. And they realize that the visual tool is something which is very, very powerful in bringing across the image. When we're learning halacha with your father, a long time chavrusa, and sometimes you need to visualize a concept, and the imagery today of the Sfarim and Oz V'Hadar and of course ArtScroll, those are the things that really bring it to life. When you see that the visual image that brings to light the concept, and then you write about it. So people say sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. I say really sometimes it's 2,000 because 1,000 is the picture, 1,000 is the commentary.
Right.
So you need both aspects to really bring it to life.
But you bring up a good point, because anyone who's studied your art on even a cursory level sees that it's not just a nice picture. There's so much depth to it, and how you incorporate the Divrei Chazal into the dimensions of the artistry is really amazing. It's an unbelievable talent.
It's humbling. I think that part of it is, and I think that really for people, people say, I saw the picture, I saw the art, it's beautiful. I said, did you read the commentary? When they say yes, it's okay, now you got it. Then it's the interplay of the two. It's been called visual medrash. And when you take the understanding of Chazal and you give it a face, and with colors, with meaning, and probably one of the pieces which is most poignant, when I did a work on Pirkei Avos, it was a 3.5-year work. I did the original manuscript for the Wallenitz family, and they commissioned the work for their son's bar mitzvah. Baruch Hashem, it was around 4 years away. And some of the pieces there, it was one of the larger works that I had done. And in the family commissioned the work, and they said, okay, we negotiated all the arrangements, financial arrangements. And a few months later, he said, okay, can I see something that's been done? I said, I'm working on it, I'm doing the research. He said, research? And he was a little, okay. He didn't understand if you're doing pictures and you're doing the writing, where's the time factor? So I said, okay, I'm working on it. And finally, I think it was 9 months later, I gave birth to the first piece. It was a piece which dealt with the timeline of Jewish history, 4,000 years of the Masorah, from Moshe Rabbeinu down to the present day. He says, okay, now I understand. And because it's something that, until you're involved with it, and again, the research to go into the piece, people ask me the tools of the trade. And I think the first thing that I work with, before the parchment, before the ink, are the Sfarim. I go to the Sfarim first, excuse me, because the parts that are most important to bring out are really, how did Chazal look at this? What was the message that they wanted to convey with a specific idea or mashal or concept or the visual representation that I could bring to the fore? So that's where I started.
Well, let's turn back the clock for a second. We were talking about your passion in your youth and your formative years for art, and then we jumped ahead to the Pirkei Avos and to your major projects. But going back to your early marriage years, when you decided to go into art, what were you doing then? What were you creating? And were you working by yourself? Were you working for someone else?
I started, I think one of the earliest commissions I received, someone asked my sister if I do ksubas. At that time, there was a rebirth of the field of ksubas, illuminated manuscripts, which goes back hundreds of years. They found instances from Italy and beyond. And working with illuminations. So they said, your brother's artistic to do ksubas. I said, I guess I do. So that was the first ksuba. I've had many people who said they had the first original Yonah Weinrib ksuba, but only one of them is the truth. And working with that, I started doing ksubas, the lettering and the design around it. Obviously, it was much more primitive than it was now. I don't have formal training, and I think that it's if anything, it's a recognition of the fact that it's a gift. It's any talent. It's a matana from HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
To me, it's incredible. I'm looking at the Kriyas Yamsuf rendition behind you. To think that this was created by someone without formal training in art is almost mind-boggling.
Yeah, this I worked on with a team, so I have to give credit to the team as well, because it's something that this was just Sefer Shmos was 4.5 years to create the one volume, the research, the writing, and again the artistic team that worked together with me to help create it. It's something that we getting the full picture of the work was started really with the calligraphy. I guess I have to really go back to my Rebbe in the field, who I looked up to when I was in Kollel. Kollel, you understand, doesn't pay a very great salary. My wife, Shalom, was teaching at the time. And so I had to supplement the income. So I did calligraphy, and I did monograms, and I did ksubas. And the first direction that I had, I believe, was from ArtScroll Printing Corporation. Reb Meir Zlato, Zechron Levracha, I consider him my Rebbe in the field. He was a person with tremendous vision. And he was artistic also. Some people don't know that he was an artist as well. But it was something that he had this appreciation. And Rabbi Shia Brander, who's the Gaon of graphics in ArtScroll, was working at the time as well with ArtScroll. But I was working as an invitation broker, dealing with creating the calligraphy for the Hebrew. At that time, it wasn't something that the fonts did not exist the way they do today.
And we should clarify, this was not ArtScroll Publications.
Yes, it was ArtScroll Printing Corporation.
ArtScroll Printing Corporation, yes, which was the precursor to ArtScroll, and a company that was creating wedding invitations,
bar mitzvah invitations, bat mitzvah invitations, ksubas, illuminated manuscripts. So a lot of the foundation of the work that I'm doing today was based on ArtScroll Printing Corporation. Rabbi Meir Zlotowitz was the one who created that foundation. Elliot Schwartz was the person who took over afterwards, and I taken a little detour when I was doing the artwork. I did the ksubas, and I came for the approbation of Rabbi Zlotowitz. Is the work up to par for ArtScroll standards? And Baruch Hashem, it met the standard that they were looking for in terms of being able to be used as an invitation broker. But could that be parnasa? So I went to school. I got a degree, and I worked in the field. I worked in the gutter for a number of years, but I was always doing projects on the side, ksubas and things, freelance. But how does that translate? At one point, when I realized that the field that I was in social work, I was working for the Aguda, which was a beautiful experience as well, but that might not translate into a parnasa. So I spoke to the people at ArtScroll, and I said, I'm looking to move into the field of art on a more practical level, and as an employee. And I went to ArtScroll Printing, and I asked for a job there because they knew my work from before. Rabbi Meir Zlotowitz was at the transition point. This goes back to '76, just at the point of going to Masorah Publications and creating Megillas Esther. I recalled to Rabbi Meir that I remember coming into his home one time. He lived on East 14th, not far from where I lived, and I saw a table full of books on Megillas Esther. This must have been, I was touched at the fact that he even allowed me to come in. Their schedule was incredible to create this first of all of the major publications from ArtScroll. So
you actually remember when Reb Meir was writing his commentary,
it was
Lilo Nishmas Reb Meir Fogel,
yes, exactly,
the very first ArtScroll book.
Right, and it was something that the book was, there was I'm not sure if it was a typewriter, computer that was there, but the books were there. And the Rebbe in all of this, the person who I think is with the vision and the clarity and the artistic skills was Reb Meir. So when I looking for a job, so I came back to ArtScroll and I said I wanted to work there, and I worked as a general manager and designer for approximately 4 years. Being in the company, there was artistic creativity. It couldn't be better. They had the business part of it also. We designed invitation catalogs and wedding invitation catalogs, bar mitzvah, New Year's cards, and we helped create the line, and I worked it. It was a very, very fulfilling responsibility to be there at ArtScroll and to have the creation. But at one point, the artistic and creative urge has to work in conjunction with everything else in life. It was after our sixth child, so I spoke to my wife and I said I wasn't feeling fulfilled coming to Manhattan. Manhattan was a challenge of its own, as people know, coming in every day and having to be there before the other employees are there and leaving afterwards, and there wasn't enough time for the learning that I wanted to do and the being active and the being fully immersed in the field of art the way I wanted to. I had a wonderful relationship, Baruch Hashem, with ArtScroll, and I said I need to go on my own, and it was I think the one who I give the most credit to is my wife, Al Shalom. It was something that probably she believed in me more than I did on myself, and it was something that she said, okay, we'll do it and we'll make it work. And it was a challenge. Okay, the first day when you're on, okay, what happens today? How will we put the food on the table? The family kinehara is growing. And we said we still do different things. We'll work with the monograms and invitations and ksubas and the design, and Hashem will guide us. And there's no question that the siyata d'shmaya was there from the beginning. I think that the one pivotal moment probably in the transition from working at ArtScroll and working on my own was really a referral that ArtScroll had made. So that attests to the fact that we left Baruch Hashem on very, very good terms, and I would work together with them. There was a family that was working for their son's bar mitzvah. Their oldest son was becoming bar mitzvah. They wanted an artistic representation for his bar mitzvah, which would be taking place in Shabbos Bereshis. And they got some different sketches from one of the other invitation brokers at ArtScroll, and they didn't have the look that they were looking for. So they came back to Elliot Schwartz and said, what do we do? So he said, speak to Yonah. He's been here. Contact him. He can help you with the design, and perhaps you can get something that's more in concert with what you're looking for in an invitation. And I designed something, and Baruch Hashem, the meeting was wonderful. It was Debbie and Elliot Gibber, who were the ones who I designed the invitation for their son's bar mitzvah, and they were thrilled. Baruch Hashem, they were very excited with the outcome. And when we finished the invitation, Baruch Hashem, they said, okay, what do you have for a bencher? So I told them, I said, I have a dream. And my vision of a bencher was, this was before a lot of the ArtScroll benches came out, and there were things on the market, but they weren't graphically attractive. There wasn't anything which made it stand out, and certainly they were all black and white. And I said, I have a vision of creating a bencher with some commentary. And again, it was a question of finishing all of the 32 pages of the illuminations, the original illuminations, in less than 4.5 months. Wow. And it was and I worked very assiduously. I worked together with Terra's Bindery. They took care of the publication aspect of it, because it was impossible to deal with both the actual work and the writing and the creating together with the publication. And Baruch Hashem, this goes back to 1986, the first, then it was called Judaic Illuminations Bencher, came out with the illumination and the artwork, and there were little micrographic designs going around it, which touched on the different measures, and I explained them in a brief synopsis at the end of the bencher. But really, that was the first venue that I had to reach the community at large.
It's so interesting how that design kind of became your identity, with the designs on the side and your little commentary, and it's the small nuances.
It's called the manuscript Shiron.
Right?
And part of it is that we were looking, and I was looking again. I wasn't into the branding, but I didn't know what branding was all about at the point. But it was something that the style of the antique flavor, and of course Chazal, they were there in every step of the way. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu directed me with it to the Giver family, Baruch Hashem, the Siyata D'Shmaya, to create the first work. And Baruch Hashem, once it reached the market, that was a Hebrew-only edition. We did a Hebrew-English edition for the next son. And Baruch Hashem, that helped tremendously.
What was the feedback like? Because this was something original people had never seen before.
Baruch Hashem, it was very, very exciting. It was humbling. It was something that people saw something, to be able to publish a work was something which was a novelty. You have. That's why with artists, and I guess part of it is a lot of artists, they're creating work in their studio, and they're hoping that someone will buy it. I guess the advantage I had, this is all commissioned work, which meant I knew at the outset that before the work could be done, there was something hopefully to cover the costs of the project. And there was another work that I did also, which also the first large project besides the bencher. I did a Haggadah in memory of the Holocaust, which is for me was a very, very personally satisfying piece. My father and mother had gone through the Holocaust, and they were survivors. And it was commissioned by a survivor, and I worked together with another colleague, David Wander, and we worked on the piece. He had seen my work at an exhibition at the Yeshiva University Museum on Ksubis. And he was looking, he didn't do calligraphy, he did the artwork for the work, and he was looking for a calligrapher to do the second part and to also deal with some of the commentary, which was exciting for me also. It was the first real venture into tying together the themes of Avdus and Cherus and Holocaust and redemption and putting it together. And we published a regular edition and a limited edition at the time. And Baruch Hashem, we had an exhibition in Yad Vashem in the museum. It was very, Baruch Hashem, very well received. But it was something for me. Was another opportunity to create, and it was exciting because projects I think have a beginning and an end, which is sometimes if you're just doing a work in the on a specific on open-ended artwork, you don't get a chance really to see the sense of closure as seeing a project being brought to completion.
But basically, you were going at this point from project to project, based on whether someone commissioned you to do it?
Right. I wasn't doing fundraising at that point to try to find sponsors. It was something that was, and again, it was tremendous seyata d'shmaya.
I think it would sound like it would be risky also, because between project and project, you still have to put food on your table, and if there's a lull in the action, and you don't have something coming up, I'm sure that was a challenge you grappled.
It was a challenge for sure. Again, and as the family starts growing, you know that the needs keep going together with it, the tuitions and everything. It was really seyata d'shmaya from day one. It was something that there are other projects, and each one. It's interesting the history of how the Pirkei Avos started. Was really an outgrowth of the bencher. It was the Walnuts family was marrying off one of their children. And they were on the Lower East Side waiting for the talis to be readied by the manufacturer. And while they're waiting, so Mr. Wallace was perusing the bookshelf, and he pulled out a volume, and it was the manuscript Shiron. And it said, commissioned by Dabinella Gibber. He said, oh, this guy does commissions. Okay, so let me talk to him about the work. And Baruch Hashem, that's how that project evolved. And another ArtScroll shidduch in terms of the work was the work on the bar mitzvah. It was originally called the work of the bar mitzvah treasury dealt with the concept of bar mitzvah, and the Rennert family was having their son being bar mitzvah, and they came to ArtScroll and they said, we want to work on this project, and we want, I guess, the commentary, the understanding, the messages together with artwork, and they said, they had one of their friends, I believe it was Mr. Louis Glick, and they said, who do you know who can do this? And someone had known my work, and they said, speak to Yonah Weinrib. And I was in the middle of doing the work on the Pirkei Avos. It was such an exciting project, I didn't want to give it up. So I worked together with Yaakov Salman, and we created that as a book. So it also helped my introduction to the Rennert family. They're phenomenal people and philanthropists and people who understand the beauty of Jewish education. And later, when I worked on other projects besides for each of their simchas, the benchers and the ksubas and things that I did for their personal simcha, when it came to do the work on the illuminated Torah, which is a huge project, that became something which I was involved with them as well.
Two interesting questions that I wanted to ask you. I should mention, I grew up davening in the same shul as Rabbi Weinrib, in Agudas Yisrael Snif Zichron Shmuel, sitting with my father a row ahead of you, and getting to watch your family grow, and always admiring your work. And when people would mention Rabbi Yonah Weinrib, I was always able to say, what do you mean? I daven in the same shul. But having this type of vocation, which is not a 9-to-5 job, how do you decide when to do the work, how to do the work? I mean, you could wake up in the morning, come back from Shachris and start writing art and write the whole day and write the whole night. How do you kind of dictate when to do it? And is there a schedule to it? Does an artist just draw and draw and draw? Is there a mahalach?
Yeah, there is a mahalach. Sometimes it's nonstop. Sometimes there's 7 days a week, which I can be working on a project, Motzi Shabbos, of course,
Right.
on a project, the Illuminated Torah, which was commissioned by the Tesler family, which was again, it was a 4.5-year work just on Sefer Shmos, and we're working with a team. It was a beloved project. The Teslers went through the war also. They went through the Holocaust. And this was a person, Baruch Hashem, Mr. Naftali Tesler, was on in his years, and each of the families owned one of the Pirkei Avos editions. We did a limited collector's edition of the Pirkei Avos. And they said they wanted to do something for perpetuity. It wasn't something that they wanted for some people like to have things for their personal collection. But Mr. Tesla said, we have to teach it to generations. And Baruch Hashem, he understood that it was an investment of time and self and the resources to make it happen. And we met, and Baruch Hashem, we started the project. It came at a very challenging time in my life. Personally, my relationship wasn't well, but Hashem said, no, this is something which has to go on, has to be done. We have to perpetuate the concepts. And it was a lot of work, and it was tremendous involvement of self. The research was exciting. The sketching, the designing, the working with the artists was very exciting. And as things started to come together, I said, this is so much bigger than me. It's taken on a life of its own. And there are long hours. There's no question sometimes at 1 a.m. I would find myself, continually keeping up with the process, because I wanted to see this come to fruition. And it was an amazing thing with the different parts came together. As soon as I finished Sefer Shmos, I said I started with Sefer Shmos. Bereshis was almost daunting. It was something that I was concerned about. Bereshis and the Bria. So I started with Shmos, the foundations of Emunah. And it's interesting that in this particular project, I did something which I had never done before. I went to Gedolim, both in America and ArtScroll, to get their haskama, written and verbal haskama on the project.
I was going to ask you about it, because some people will say that you're doing something creative and revolutionary when you have detractors. And I always wondered, were there any people who ever said, Rabbi Weinrib, great work, but taking Torah and taking Divrei Chazal and making pictures, and you ever have anyone who questioned whether this was the right way to go in terms of Jewish education?
Yeah, there were people who sometimes would look at. I'm very careful, and I've spoken to Rabbanim before I started the work. There's no picture of Avram Avinu. Everything is from behind. You won't find pictures of the Avos and the Moshe Rabbeinu. They're too great. We minimize their stature if we try to create. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu looked like, and this is what the Avos. And it's hard, because educationally you'll find all of the workbooks and the books that the children have, very often there will be pictures of the Avos. They need that, so there's a balance. I felt in my work, in some ways, we couldn't do it. So that's really why I went to the Gedolim. And there was one Rav, particularly when I was doing Bereshis, he said, Bereshis with pictures? I said, I don't know, maybe just do the text. I said, I won't sell. Bereshis you need the vibrancy of the Bria, and it was something that he said, I don't know, go ask what they say in Eretz Yisrael. And this is I already had some haskamas. I had finished Sefer Shmos beforehand, and I went to Rav Mechli Yehuda Lefkowitz, who was one of the gedolim in education, and I sat down with him a number of times to show him the different pages that I was doing, pages on Bereshis and Shmos, and he gave me a beautiful warm haskama and Divrei Bracha on the project. I went to Rav Yaakov Hillel, who, by the way, himself was an artist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he's again, Baruch Hashem, the world has him in a different capacity today as one of the Gedolim in the Sephardic community. And I spoke to him. He also gave me Divrei Bracha, and Rav Don Segel also didn't give me a written haskama, but he gave me a verbal appreciation of the work. And again, Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel, Rav Moshe Shapiro, Zechron L'Racha, Rav Shmuel Birnbaum gave me the last haskama b'chayav, and Rav Belsky also. The last written haskama, I believe, b'chayav was from Rav Belsky about the project. And really, people said, you need Gedolim attesting to your ability in art. I said, that's not what it's about. It's using art as a tool to teach Torah. Mm-hmm. And it was something in Baruch Hashem, we have a collection of different letters from Rav Malkiel Kotler, Rav L'Chaim, and Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, Rav Ram Shor. And they understand that we live in a very visual world. And the problem is the world that the world is seeing today is not what we want them to see. And they understood, the Gedolim, and with their approbations understood that when you're taking something like Torah and packaging it in a way that there can be appreciation of not just the artwork, but the content comes to life, it's very enriching and very rewarding for me.
Now, before we get to your music and other creativity, I wonder, in the world of writing, there's a concept of writer's block. A writer just, it's not going. In the world of art, is there such a concept as artist block where you sit down and it's just not going? And what's your solution? What do you do?
You go back to the books. I think sometimes it's Chazal, really. It's interesting, when I was working with David Wander, we work on the Haggadah, and later we were discussing different things, and he saw some of the different publications that we had, and he said, like, where do you get your ideas from? I said, it's all there. It's in the books. Let's learn. And we started learning together. He was doing the work on Sefer Yonah, which we subsequently published as well. And we started learning together. He was living in Manhattan. We were learning MTJ, Sefer Yonah, to get some different concepts of Chazal that ultimately he used in his work, and I used in mine as well. So it's something that there can be a block, and sometimes you have to get the visual Drano to get past it. And going back into Chazal, sometimes you'll go into the concepts, and you'll see it comes together. And when it's a phenomenal fusion of the visual and the intellectual and the spiritual, because there's a very, very important spiritual component in the art. And I think that's something that people say, I was inspired by the art. I said, you think, what does it mean, inspired by art? How are you inspired by art? I think it's not the art. It's the vision that we're giving them, hopefully, the glasses to be able to see, what did Chazal mean? How do you understand? There's a concept in the Pirkei Avos, for example, of Olam Hazeh Dam Leproser. This world is like an antechamber before the world to come. So how do you depict, this world and the world to come? It's a phenomenal concept. But this world I depict as a sukkah, it's a temporary dwelling. And I use the vision of Chazal to say that's what this world is all about. We're here for the period of our existence. But there was a sukkah in the world to come as well. The way you're building your sukkah down here, that's really will be your eternal reward in the world to come as well. And I work with the different images, and it came together, I think, in the synthesis of the artwork together with the writing and the messages of Chazal to really make it happen.
Now, many people may know that your art is not limited to the creativity of your hands, but that you were involved in music early on. Talk about your creativity, your compositions, your singing. Some people may not know, it's a different generation, different time, and music changes. So talk about that. When did you first get involved in music?
It's my father used to sing. We used to, again, growing up in the aura of Rabbi Shapiro, Zechron Lebracha, so Libi B'Sari, which is one of the classics from Rabbi Shapiro, that was sung at our Shabbos table almost every Shabbos. There weren't a lot of Zemiros, but I remember that was one of the classics from my childhood that I remembered, and it was important to him to make that connection, to bridge the generations through music. That was one part, but again, it wasn't something which was formal. I picked up guitar in my high school years, and I started composing. Once you play a little bit, Hashem Lokei Yisrael is one of the earliest compositions, and it found the favor in Baruch Hashem in the world of yeshivas.
Hashem Lokei Yisrael.
That's it.
Yeah.
And later, Dov used it also for the song about Rabbi Akiva.
It was on the Suki and Din Kumsitz album later on, if you remember.
I guess you know that you've made a mark sometimes when it's something which comes out later, years later.
Right.
People say, I never heard this before, but it's something which really comes back. And camp really, we had the opportunity to share some of the musical messages. I came to camp. I had never gone to camp as a camper, which is again, growing up out of town, and it was expensive, being able to go from there to there. So we did whatever we had to in Connecticut. But when the opportunity presented itself in Camp Tervadas, and someone asked me to become a counselor, I said, okay. I didn't know what it involved, but I came to camp the first day not knowing almost anyone. I knew maybe one or two other people in the camp, and I heard the strumming of guitar. My friend Yaakov Salm was involved in music, and they were working on a night activity for the first night, trying to come up with some things. And I said, guitar, I can play a little guitar, and I came along. and we sang, and I was night activity for the first night, and then we developed a relationship. Baruch Hashem. From there, Simchaton was one of the earlier albums we had done. This goes back in the 70s.
So Simchaton was a group, right?
Started in Camp Torvadas.
Started in Camp Torvadas.
Right.
You?
Myself, Yaakov Salman, Benzi Schechter. Those were the vocals. Hetzi Hassenfeld was involved in the music. Simcha Gabriel Shalom was involved in the drumming. Shlomo Lowenbraun, both in terms of playing and compositions. So it was a camp production. It was nothing. It doesn't come up to the compositions that are done today and some of the productions with full-fledged orchestras. But it was our musical statement for the time. It was something which was fun. We enjoyed working together. It was something. And
some of your compositions appeared on there as well?
Yeah, a number of the compositions were mine. And again, sometimes if it stands the test of time, that's a very favorable approbation you get from the world at large. Because
and again, how many albums did you produce?
We did
ultimately?
two albums.
2 albums.
Simpleton one, Vaharenu, which was a song that Yaakov Shweki used and Avram Fried used. That was something which also found its time. And there's another element, and I guess this is where the writing worked together with that as well. That Jep was coming out with a number of records at the time, and Yosef Chaim Golding and Nachman Golding were working on albums. And again, it was at the time it was something which they said albums to raise money for tzedakah, for kiruv. They said it's not going to happen. They made it happen, and it was something that they asked me. They were working on the song "One Peaceful Friday Night," which is one of the main songs of the album, and I did part of the lyrics for that, and I did some number of other songs that showed my children. The Master Artist is a song which was composed later. And it was again the creativity. It's not me. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu who was given a gift of whether it's the art, or the music, or the writing, and he says, okay, this is your palette. It's a different palette for everyone. Use it, and this is the Kabed Hashem Mehonecha, is from the possessions that we have, the talents, whatever we have. If we can craft it, if we can fine tune it, we can make it something which can be used for Avodas Hashem, and at any level, I think that's something which is very, very powerful.
You're talking about older songs coming back. Our good friend Donnie Gross,
right,
who appreciates the older music, put out a beautiful album last year with Baruch Levine. Off the record, I think One Peaceful Friday Night is on there.
And the Dov Dov song is there.
And
also.
the Dov Dov song is there also. It's refreshing. It must be for someone like you, where music from decades ago is getting a rebirth. And V'harenu, Ki Atahu Bala Yeshuos. You know that
beautifully.
a song like that, which like you mentioned, was on Avram Fried's Around the Year, and then on Shweki B'Seiris. For that to get a new life must be such a satisfactory feeling for a composer.
It stands the test of time, and I think that today sometimes you go to Chas and say, what are they playing? It's something
right.
we had recently. We had a Kumzitz. Some of the oldies got back together. We called Only Oldies. We'll invite you to the next one in Mitzvah Shem. Shabbos Nachmus, Yaakov Salman, myself, Yerachmiel Milstein, Bera Leiner, Avrami Flam. These are names that the later generations probably never heard of, but and of course Eli Cohn on the music, doing the music. And my son-in-law Eli Melech Adler was also a phenomenal musician.
Sure.
Got together, and they were again. It wasn't for publication. It was mostly the families and people who heard about it. You got together, only old songs, only oldies. And it was something that it was refreshing because it was something. It goes back to an era, and I think that very often that the music is a reflection of the times. Like one song which you had, the title song on the second album, Keeping Watch, was a reflection of what was happening in Soviet Jewry at the time. And very often when I did the music, I did the music and the lyrics for Keeping Watch, and it reflected about a child growing up in Russia, and that was the statement of the day, the struggle for Soviet Jewry, and the music in some cases reflected that. After the 6-Day War, the rabbi sons, of course, they were our icons. They developed music. And very often, some of it was a reflection of Kol Olam Kulo, Gesher Tzar Ma'od, to some of the wars, the Yom Kippur War, and the freshness of the music, their harmony, which is again something which we were very taken by, is something which is so important because it just gives it another dimension. So the music, the art, the writing, when you confuse them together, And it's really, each one of them is a challenge and responsibility to take them and to use them properly and to create something which is for Kvod Shemayim.
Well, you've used both of those talents remarkably. I should just, to go back to Vaharenu for a moment, we had an interesting thing happen over here at ArtScroll when Yaakov Shweki visited, and we were walking through the bindery and the warehouse, and he told me this interesting tidbit which ended up going viral. I'm sure you had you chuckled when you heard it, but for those who didn't hear it, basically he recounted how when he was recording his Cyrus Kumsitz album, they chose songs that he appreciated, and his producer Yochi Briskman, they chose really beautiful songs, and one song was Vaharenu. They recorded it in the studio. They didn't know who the composer was, and they were coming to the end of production, and Hashkacha had it that night, Yaakov's aunt had called him to go sing for a family. Happened to be your wife, Alaa Shalom, to go sing for her and your mishpacha, and there he is in your home singing this beautiful song. And then he says, by the way, this is going to be on my upcoming album, and I don't know who the composer is. And there you are sitting there, the composer. So, the Rebbeinu Shalom brings things together in an amazing fashion. That just an interesting tidbit about that song.
Each step of the way, it's part of the journey in art and in music and the writing. It's something that I found that when I started publishing and working with ArtScroll. Again, we have our own company, Judaica Illuminations, but that's the art component. But again, you want to bring it to the world, and ArtScroll has been. Look what they've done. It's amazing. Reb Meir Zlotowitz, now Reb Gedalia Baruch Chaim, has taken the reins of the Torah majesty and being able to bring it to the next generation. And for people, we were growing up, when the first ArtScroll publications came out with Megillas Esther and the other Megillas in succession, and the amount of work that I know Reb Meir, he did the writing together with Reb Nosson, also another Rebbe of mine in terms of the literary artistry which he's created. It's something it was so refreshing to the generation that nothing like this has been done before. And they talk to the people who could appreciate the fact that we need somebody that talks to us. People, right. The Bali Tshuva, who didn't have access. And I think part of it is they were mining treasures. And they understood that taking the works of Chazal, the things that we had access to from our years in yeshiva, and making it accessible to them, it was such a gift to the ArtScroll revolution has been something which is, and we were there at the beginning. We saw the initial stages. I'm humbled to count Reb Meir as a mentor and friend.
Listen, you and Reb Meir Zlotowitz were clearly kindred spirits, because
right.
Both of you recognize that if you're putting out works related to Torah and Yiddishkeit, that they have to be works of perfection, of beauty, representing Yiddishkeit and Torah in the most exalted and sterling light.
Yeah, and I think that the vision that he had for what ArtScroll was is something that there's no question that it's affected my work. Again, in terms of and even though a lot of the works, the initial ArtScroll works, only had perhaps a full color cover, but the text itself was a text. I hope to give it the dimension when I started working in full color. My first address in terms of distribution was ArtScroll, and then I came back to Meir, and then when I had done the Pirkei Avos in the larger edition, I said, but it's something which is a collected edition of 613 copies, but we have to bring it to the Hamonam. And we published one of the first publications I did besides the Bar Mitzvah book was on the Pirkei Avos in a smaller edition to make it accessible for the community at large. And each of the publications that I've done, Baruch Hashem, we have 18, close to 20 publications that I've done. And ArtScroll is the address for distribution because it's something that they understand the appreciation of the art and the writing. The marketing is something which is there, and there's a mission. And Rav Gedalia has taken the reins of ArtScroll and continued it. And it's something that being able to reach the community at large is something that it's so important. And one thing which I think also which they've harnessed is the ability of people to partner together with them in their works. And the Shattenstein edition is something which is, the Gemara is such an incredible project that they've taken on, but people have worked together with them, and it's the families that they're creating a legacy. And again, my mental drawing board of different projects that I have hopefully it'll be coming out. There are other things, and again, it's the vision of people that understand that to create a work, the research, the writing, the artwork, the production, the culmination of all the different aspects coming together need the support of people with vision. And Rabbi Meir understood that bringing them together on board, and really he created the model of ArtScroll, of having families join them in the work, because it's a legacy for Klal Yisrael.
Now you speak of your mission. What's your mission today? Can I know, like you mentioned, 18 to 20 works impacting Jews all around the globe in such a creative way. What's next for Rabbi Yonah Weinrib?
There are other parts. We'd like to finish the series both on the Megillah. So far we're republishing the Megillah Esther. The Gindi family in California commissioned all 5 original manuscripts of the Megillah, which means that I work together with a sofer. I'm a calligrapher, not a sofer. There's no artistic license in Safras, but working together with all the illuminations around that. So we've published so far Megillah Esther, Shir Hashir and Rus, and we'd like to be able to finish the collection of that. Working with the Chumash as well, Sefer Bereshis and Sefer Shmos that come out. We came out with smaller editions as well. I've heard from Rabbeim they will use sometimes the images from that. We like to use it educationally. Mm-hmm. Torah Masorah is a phenomenal resource in terms of reaching people, and we're hoping to do some of the work together with them to create the different venues and avenues so that you can take the work in an artistic form together with the messages, so that you can really bring this to the community at large. And there are other projects that hopefully will see the light of day that they have envisioned and put together sketches. And I mean, it's just the shidduch will work out to create it and hopefully make it happen.
Now you said before, Kabed Hashem Me'Haincha, Kanai Nohara, over the past 4.5 decades, you've utilized these God-given gifts, whether in terms of art, writing, music, whatever Hashem has allowed you to, these mediums, to reach people. You've done a remarkable job, and I offer my Birchas Hediyah to continue to utilize your many talents to touch people, to inspire people, to uplift them, and you should be able to continue to create such creative projects for many years to come.
Amen. It's with a Sheva Faidot HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Each time I'm able to finish a project, it's a Shechianu. It really is. It's a tremendous Hakar Satov HaKadosh Baruch Hu. My mother, Allah Shalom, wanted to be an accountant. To be an accountant, again, I said, Mom, it's not going to work. I have a creative spark and the soul that hopefully will go together with it. But accounting was not going to be the way I was going to be taking it. And I think that part of it is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows you to take your inborn traits and the gifts that He's given you, and to challenge something that I love what I'm doing. Something it can't be more rewarding. When my children, of course, they're my originals, but the publications that we're doing that allow people to see not the artwork of Yonah Weinrib, but the artwork of Chazal, the beauty of Torah. When they're seeing it coming across, hopefully they way together with the writing. And I sure hope that they will read the commentary as well. Hopefully it'll be uplifting, and they'll have an opportunity to see that and use that. And we're all working together, as with ArtScroll, to be Marble Kvoid Shemayim.
Amen. Thank you again for coming.
My pleasure.